The moment a narcissist realizes they can't control you anymore, they don't just move on, they panic. It's been 11 days. No calls, no replies, nothing. And then, at once, everything at once. A message, a missed call from a number you don't recognize, a friend who suddenly wants to know how you're doing, a friend you haven't heard from in months. It feels like the world is closing in. It isn't. What you're watching is a system malfunctioning. Because when you go no contact with a narcissist, you don't just leave. You remove the one thing they were relying on. And what happens next follows a pattern so predictable, it has a name in behavioral science. Stage 1. The supply cuts out. Narcissistic supply is the attention, reaction, and validation a person with these traits needs from others to keep their self-image intact. Not wants, needs. It's the fuel the whole structure runs on. And here's what matters. Negative attention counts. Your anger counts. Your tears count. Your long explanations of why they hurt you count. As long as you were reacting, the machine kept running. This is why arguments never resolved anything. Why the carefully written message explaining exactly how you felt changed nothing. You weren't failing to communicate. You were providing exactly what the system needed in a form you thought was a conversation. Silence is the only thing that doesn't feed it. That's why it produces the reaction it does. Stage 2, the escalation. In behavioral psychology, there's a term for what comes next. The extinction burst. When a behavior has been rewarded for a long time and the reward suddenly stops, that behavior doesn't fade quietly. First, it gets louder. A vending machine that always gave you a drink and suddenly doesn't. You don't walk away calmly. You press again, harder, repeatedly. You hit it. That's what those 11 days of silence produce. Not reflection, not remorse. An escalation. Messages that start warm and turn cold within the same paragraph. Apologies that arrive alongside accusations. Emergencies that require your immediate attention. A crisis timed perfectly. And often, contact through other people. A mutual friend who reaches out to say they're worried about you. A family member who thinks you're being unfair. There's a term for this in the recovery literature. Flying monkeys. People used, usually without realizing it, to carry a message you've stopped accepting directly. Most of them aren't malicious. They've simply heard one version of events, and they're repeating it in good faith. And here's the part that almost nobody explains. The escalation is not evidence that you were wrong to leave. It is evidence that the leaving is working. The behavior is getting louder because it stopped being rewarded. Stage 3, the replacement. Eventually, if the silence holds, something shifts. The intensity drops off. The messages stop. And often, somewhere in the background, someone else appears. A new relationship, a new friendship, a new audience. Sometimes it happens with a speed that feels impossible. That speed is the point. It isn't proof that they moved on because they never cared. It's proof that the source was replaceable and always was. Because what was being sought was never you specifically. It was a supply of attention, and one supply can be substituted for another. This is the stage most people describe as the cruelest. It also happens to be the clearest confirmation of everything the pattern was built on. But there's another side to this, and it's the one people are least prepared for. Because while all of that is happening to them, something is happening to you too. You'd expect relief. Instead, many people describe something closer to withdrawal. Intrusive thoughts. Checking your phone for a message you don't want to receive. Rewriting the entire relationship in your head searching for the version where it wasn't that bad. Missing someone you know you should not miss. This isn't a lack of willpower. It's the mechanism from the last video, running in reverse. Remember intermittent reinforcement? Unpredictable rewards create the strongest attachments. That system didn't just make you stay. It rewired what your brain treats as relief. Cold, then warm. Silence, then attention. Over and over, until relief and love became the same signal. When you go no contact, that signal stops. And what follows resembles withdrawal because, mechanically, it is the same shape of process. A reward pathway that expected something and got nothing. Which is why the hardest moment isn't the day you leave. It's the middle. The point where the escalation is loudest and your own resistance is at its lowest at exactly the same time. That overlap is not a coincidence. It's the pattern's last functioning mechanism, and it's worth being precise about this, because it's where the most damage gets done. The pull you feel in that middle stretch is not information. It doesn't tell you that the relationship was better than you remember. It doesn't tell you that you made a mistake. It tells you that a conditioned response is running out of fuel and running loudly on the way down. There's one more thing worth understanding. Hoovering, the pull back in, doesn't always arrive during the escalation. Sometimes it comes months later, when everything has been quiet for a long time, and you've started to feel like yourself again. That timing isn't random either. It usually corresponds to a gap on their side, a supply that stopped working, a relationship that ended, a moment of instability. The return isn't about you. It's about a vacancy. Recognizing that doesn't make the message easier to ignore, but it changes what the message actually is. Not a change of heart, a restocking. None of this makes any of it painless. Understanding a mechanism doesn't dissolve it. It just stops it from being mysterious. And mystery is where most of the self-blame lives. And one thing needs saying clearly. If you're in a situation where leaving could put you in physical danger, this isn't something to work through alone. That's a situation for people trained to handle it. A professional, a local support service, someone qualified to help you plan it safely. But if what you're facing is the psychological pull, the messages, the doubt, the strange grief for someone who hurt you, then what you're experiencing isn't weakness, and it isn't a sign you were wrong. It's a system running out of fuel, loudly, right before it stops. If you've been through the middle stretch, what helped you hold the line? Let me know in the comments. But if what you're fighting is the psychological pull, the messages, the doubt, the strange grief for someone you know hurt you, remember what you're actually watching. A system that used to receive a response, getting nothing, and running louder, right before it runs out of fuel. If you've been through that middle stretch, what helped you hold the line? Let me know in the comments.